Hello, everyone. We're so glad that you're here today. My name is Mary. I'm a program specialist with Johnson County Library, and we are here today with Patrick Kelly, Establish the Stats, Chase the Story. But before we begin, as we come together today, we acknowledge that this land has long been home to indigenous peoples who have stewarded it for generations. We recognize and honor the Kansa, Kaskaskia, Kickapoo, Osage, Peoria, Sioux, and Shawnee tribes, and acknowledge their continued presence, resilience, and cultural contributions. May we engage with this space, this place, with awareness, respect, and a commitment to learning from the past as we create together in the present. I'm here to introduce Patrick Kelly. He spent his formative years in Britt, Iowa. After high school, he competed as a collegiate wrestler at the University of Iowa before finishing his career at the University of Nebraska at Omaha. Kelly has written articles, produced podcasts, and has his first book just published this year called K-State's Wrestling Legacy. He's been a teacher and a coach for 30 years and is a national board-certified teacher. He lives in Topeka with his wife, Lisa, and they have 3 grown children. And here he is. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I'd like to thank the Johnson County Library for putting this wonderful writing conference together, and I'm just honored to be here presenting, so thank you. So again, my topic of today is Establish the Stats, Chase the Story. It's really based out of the book I wrote, K-State's Wrestling Legacy, on just what it took to put the stories together, and I'll get to that as we go here. Make sure this is okay. So to start off with, just a little bit more of an introduction about myself. My writing background, it's steeped in personal writing, from interviewing my father before his 70th and another time at 75th birthday, kind of a comprehensive look at different areas of his life. For my 3 children, I did what I termed yearly write-ups and turned them into kind of a newsletter sort of a year recap of each of my children. Just little personal family books, newsletters from my wrestling days at my college, and then a little club I got started. So writing has just been a part of who I was growing up. I didn't know exactly where it was going. However, I did always have, from high school on, have a goal of mine to produce a book, to publish a book. Didn't know what it was going to be about, but something in the wrestling area. And so it's been, it took 3 years to write it, but it actually took, a lifetime really to get it to where it's at. And then on to published works, getting a book and articles for various wrestling magazines. I've submitted to daily newspapers and that sort of thing as well. So again, it's something that has just been of interest to me ongoing through my years. And a lot of times, when I talk about the personal writing, I spent as much time with that as I have, any other kind of writing that I've done commercially even, that it's just, I think writing is writing, and you want to do it as good as you can, and you can't get it off your mind a lot of times until it's published, no matter what you're talking about. Current project, back in 1975 and 76, the Kansas State High School Athletic Activities Association had what they called Grand State. So they had the individual class tournament, and then the week later they had an overall tournament for girls basketball and wrestling, and then for just 1 year, boys basketball was included. And what I found with the book, with different things I'm doing in the wrestling space, is it's really not about wrestling. It's just compelling stories. And that's an example where you can integrate history and other family dynamics into the writing that you're doing. Future projects, probably anybody that wrestles in, or that wrestles in a certain space, that writes in a certain space, there's endless projects, endless ideas out there that I could do, and I've got some of those on the back burner as well. But I'd also like to venture out of the wrestling space and maybe some memoir kind of writing, biography kind of writing, that sort of thing as well. That would be appealing to me. As far as the session content today, we're going to talk about the value of primary source information to really get the details down of a story that you're putting together, and use that as the foundation to make sure your story is historically tight, accurate details are there before you add to that foundation. And we've been exposed to the writing process since our early elementary days, but I'm going to revisit that a little bit as part of just putting out quality writing and the process to it. And at the end, I'm going to bring up a couple case studies from the book that kind of demonstrate how all these things were put together and manifested themselves in the stories that are in the book. Okay. So first, gathering accurate statistics, names, dates, numbers, places, those kind of things create the foundation that you're going to build on. And looking at the primary sources, that list of primary sources there, personal accounts, I list that first because I feel like that's the gold standard. Sometimes part of the process is finding those personal accounts, finding the people that were part of it or family members that were part of it to get that personal touch to the story. But I'll say that's the gold standard, but it's not necessarily the most accurate place to get your primary source information from, because sometimes I've found people don't remember exactly the year or exactly the place something happened, and you might have to help supply that to them with factual information that you've been able to find. And the source is newspapers, a great source and readily available. Yearbooks are more and more available with digitizing. Some high schools even now have classes where they have kids working on that and making that information available very easily to, a lot of times, to anybody just through their website. Vital statistics that communities or counties keep have been very helpful with filling in details. Newsreels, maybe to a lesser degree for me, but a very good source of primary information. Letters may be more rare, but again, that personal connection to an event can happen through those letters. Photographs, that's a whole other area of studying a photograph for what the people were wearing, or just how important that event was with the photographs that come out. So some commercial resources, and most of you probably utilize these and know of them, but I thought it was really important that much of this stuff is available free, with a library membership anymore at most libraries, or if it's not, they can connect you with where it might be. So Ancestry.com, there's different versions of it. For part of my research, I paid for a 6-month as I was getting my research done, and I found that very helpful. There's all kinds of great information on there. A little bit spotty as far as the information that's uploaded to it from people and available, but I found it a great source. Newspapers.com, same thing, but you're not going to get all the newspapers, so supplementing that with state archives and that sort of thing, or at a local library has been very helpful. Genealogy librarians, historical societies and museums. I found that those people, as we see here, are just excellent, and they love their jobs and are just very helpful. One sort of recent incident I had, there was for this event, I was trying to get the details I needed, could not find them. Could not find them in newspapers.com, couldn't find it going to the state archives. find out that that particular newspaper had two versions, a version that came out for the community itself, and then a version that came out for the outlying areas, the smaller towns around there. So I called down to the local library, and never met this person. I can't even remember their name off the top of my head, but more than helpful. Did the legwork for me, called me back, gave me the information, and even emailed me a PDF of what I was looking for. So that's fairly typical for what I've run into with those folks that librarians, historical societies, museums. So utilize those people. They're awesome. Personal accounts. There's all kinds of searches out there, and hopefully those are three that are maybe a little bit more reputable. I had one case where I actually paid to find some information through white pages, and it turned out to be some critical information that I needed. So that's another place that for commercial sources. Right. The writing process. Again, this is something that we've been exposed to from elementary school on, but I think it's important to keep it front and center as you're constructing your writing. So translating that statistics, you work so hard on accumulating, and now putting it to a coherent, logical story. So keep that writing process in mind. And know that it's not necessarily a linear process, and it's not necessarily a 5-step process or named the exact steps there. You may have your own or been taught differently, but the idea of having a process in mind as you write. So pre-writing, I consider that your roadmap on what you want to do, where you want to go. What's the scope of what you're wanting to write about? The research part, that is the work, the late nights, the early mornings, the little bits of paper that you have something written on and come back to. And I call it the work, but that doesn't mean it's not fun, because some of my most enjoyable moments within that were in that research phase, where you're maybe discovering things that you didn't know you weren't necessarily that weren't necessarily on your roadmap. And even a few things that those primary source people that you found don't know about their own family. And I think that was pretty neat that you can contribute a little bit to the people that you're getting information from. I thought that was really a gratifying part of the book process, especially. Step 3, the drafting. Let the fun begin. So we're just writing, and as I say down here, words of wisdom, writing is rewriting, and that process just never ends. But it is definitely, I think anybody in this room would probably agree that that's the fun part, the really enjoyable part of the process. Revising, and to me, it's preparing for scrutiny. So you're editing, revising, changing, maybe substituting information or words, whatever, and getting it to where you have it ready for somebody else's eyes to look at your work. The editing and proofreading piece to it. And I have found that it is very necessary. Any seminar that I've listened to or people I've talked to that have published, it seems like everybody talks about that, is you cannot self-edit and be ready for publication. Well, it's something that I'm really familiar with, and it's not that lengthy, but inevitably you're going to find things that aren't accurate or that you could have said differently by having somebody else take a look at it. And I told you I was engaged now in the Grand State research. That involves information from 1975, 76, and then in the wrestling community, they formed another similar tournament not sponsored by the Academy Association in 81 and 82. So I included that information as well. And then modern day, how interested we are in the wrestling community of finding who that number one person is, which Grand State was all about. So we have a modern day just ranking list. And I tell you that because somebody in 1975 that maybe was a senior in high school, their blinders are on, and all they know and remember is 1975. They're off to college after that, so they don't really remember what happened in 76, or definitely 81, 82. And same thing with those people that were engaged with that. So taking your editing and proofreading, they don't need to see the whole 122 pages document. They just maybe need to see the 1975 part, give the 76 to somebody who was involved in that. And that way you get, I think, a better, eyes on what they know and what they remember, and are able to give you feedback back without seeing the full picture of it. And that I found has been very helpful. Same thing with the book, giving certain chapters to certain people that were more involved in that particular topic. Then again, words of wisdom, writing is rewriting. That's a really good one. Don't let great be the enemy of good. I heard, it's a common, but I remember when I heard that, I was trying to piece some information together, and a person in the industry told me that. He said, this is very good. Don't scrap it just because you can't find this certain piece of information that you want. Sure, you want it, but you're just not going to do anything with it if you don't have that. So don't let great be the enemy of good. It's really important. And I think that, as a teacher, sometimes when I'm talking with students, that doesn't come into play as much when you're so passionate about a topic that you want it to be as good as it can, or nothing at all. And so don't let good be the enemy, or don't let great be the enemy of good. Never done, always developing. That's another one similar to writing is rewriting. I think it was Walt Whitman that when he passed away, he was amongst his published works that were in various processes of him editing them, the books and things. And I just think that that's another one that, even though this has been published and is out there, these yellow tabs indicate little things that I want tweaked and changed. So I can really relate to that one. So case studies here. The book, first, going about a book like this, the original topic of finding those statistics. Who were the major players and the more prominent people in this particular case, the K-State wrestling program that was ended in 1975 and started in 1922. So what are you going to do to find, for those people to surface that were the main people that you want to focus on? And Elmer Hackney was one that came to the surface. In the wrestling community, what's interesting is this really neat caricature here on the left does not include the sport of wrestling, because he was such a prominent athlete in track and field and football. In track and field, he held the American record for 11 years, and in football, he played in the NFL for 7 years, and didn't reach those kind of heights in the sport of wrestling, but enough so to where he surfaced when I was doing my research as a name that is worth looking into more. So I want to read the opening passage from that chapter. And he went by the name, by the way, of One Man Gang. He got that moniker early on in his college career. In 1864, a 15-year-old named James Barton Hackney of Zanesville, Ohio, enlisted in the Union Army during the Civil War as a drummer boy. After a year of service with Company K, 122nd Ohio Volunteer Infantry, he was captured by the Confederate Army and spent 13 months in Libby Prison in Richmond, Virginia, and Andersonville in Georgia. After being honorably discharged, he returned to his home in Ohio. At 19, his father George passed away, and his family left Zanesville behind and ventured to start a new life in Atlantic, Iowa, where George had purchased land before his death. James later separated from the family, set out on his own. He settled in a 140 miles west near the eastern Nebraska community of Seward under the Soldiers' Homestead Act. In 1876, he married a local, Frances Nels. She was 18, he was 10 years her senior. 3 years later, the couple moved 150 miles southwest to Decatur County in Kansas, enticed by land offered through the U.S. Land Office at Oberlin, a town of about 1,200 residents at the time. Located in the far reaches of northwest Kansas, the couple would raise their 8 children there. I read that opening because this is information that the family that I was able to connect with did not know. They didn't know any of that. And all I wanted to find at this time was the number of acres that the Hackney farm encompassed. So I was looking at to try to demonstrate where they were kind of in the social order of things at the time. Were they, big farmers, small, what kind of farm did they operate? And so going through the Decatur County Land Office, I was able to look at the plat maps. That gave me a certain amount of information from certain years. But they were able to then, for $2, I had to send a check out there, they were able to give me a photocopy of the history of that parcel of land. And from there, I found different names that were involved in the family and was able to uncover that information. And it was really a couple things. It was just great information to find. I mean, the connection to history there, but also it gave a sense of who this person, the person I'm focusing on, Elmer, who he become based on his background. Why was he the way he was? Well, that history has a little bit to do with that, I think. And so that was really a fun piece of information to uncover. So some of that primary source information, spent lots of hours in Hale Library on the Kansas State University campus. And then through a few connections that I had in northwest Kansas, they gave me a name, I followed up, and found Elmer Hackney's granddaughter. So I went and visited at her home a few times and gathered some great information. So I have a good sense of what he accomplished, where he came from, some of the hardships he went through, and now I have that personal touch, a person that actually knew him and was a big part of his life. And Elmer Hackney, you got to know at the time. I mean, obviously, big, good-looking guy, even by today's standards, and he was on the K-State campus. They voted him Mr. something, I can't remember what they called it, but some glamour award even but there were things in his life that were difficulties. His first daughter, was killed in a tragic car accident when she was young, 28 years old, a young mother. And the granddaughter that I found was in the car at the time. So there were struggles also, and that's where that personal touch came into play in the story. And to have the full context of the chapter and information about Elmer, it may not be as compelling, but when I read this part, it kind of chokes me up. Even I've read it probably 40 times, and it still does, because you get a sense of who this person was, the accomplishments and the status that they had at the time, not only at K-State, not only in Kansas, but nationally. He a national figure. But he was a real person. And I'm going to read you a couple paragraphs towards the end of this chapter. Okay. On May 30th, 1969, 52-year-old Elmer One-Man Gang Hackney died of a heart attack while at home reading the newspaper in his bed. Only 7 months had passed since his daughter's accident. But Betty's death took a toll on him. He struggled daily to cope and make sense of the tragedy until his passing. In Ellen's estimate, that's his wife, in Ellen's estimate, the death of their daughter was so hard on her husband that she feels it contributed to his death. Grandma always thought that he died of a broken heart because it was so hard on him, said granddaughter Jamie Gardner while reflecting from her home. Jamie remembers spending a lot of time with her grandparents and even living with them for a time after the accident. She reflects fondly on the time that she spent with them, and good memories surrounded her grandpa. There was watching football on TV, fishing, wearing his oversized white t-shirt as a nightgown. Over 50 years later, you can tell by her enthusiasm and genuine smile that she reminisces that her grandpa was special to her, not for scoring touchdowns with defenders hanging from him, or heaving the shot put like a rocket, or packing Nichols Hall to the rafters while winning wrestling matches. To her, he was grandpa, and she loved spending time with him and tagging along on errands. So to me, that's really, kind of brings it full circle. And I wouldn't have had that information had it not been for that research part, the work part of putting that together. Because there was a perfectly enough information for me to write about him, to write a full chapter, but incorporating that personal touch in the exacting details, I think is really adds to the story. So, Elmer Hackney. The second case study I want to talk about is Wayne Jackson, and also kind of importantly to note, Elmer died in 1969, so 56 years ago. Wayne is still alive. I've been to his house in Arkansas City several occasions, videoing him and getting information. But one thing that, on the research end of things, so in the wrestling community, his story is famous, I should say, not infamous, famous. About him, and I've got a 3-minute video I'm going to show that kind of explains it. But he hitchhiked from Manhattan, Kansas to Seattle, Washington to attend the NCAA championships. But one thing that's a legendary story is this over here, where Jackson's unique trip includes a stay in jail, and that's the Manhattan Mercury, a well-reputed newspaper, but it's not true. So I had to print these little cards and put a different headline over there, because in sitting down and talking to him, and by the way, they staged a picture too of him that day, of him starting his hitchhiking journey. But in sitting down and talking to him, he explained that he did end up in Ogallala, Nebraska, western Nebraska, on his way. And he stopped police officers and said, "Hey, can I spend a night in jail? I'm, traveling here and I don't have any money. Can I just sleep in your jail cell?" And they said, "No, you can't do that." And they helped put him up in this, what he calls ratty motel. But again, it's an example of something that had I not had Wayne to talk to, I might have just gone with it. Because look, it's in the Manhattan Mercury. So here is Wayne on the left, and a man named Mike D'Antuono on the right here. Wayne, and you got to know his personality a little bit. He is really the alpha of Kansas high school wrestling coaches. He's won 13, he won 13 state titles as a coach when he was coaching, and that record was just tied this last year. But he is, one of the icons of Kansas high school wrestling. But as I say in the book, if you put him in a room of 100 coaches and you came in and were asked to guess who's the coach with 13 state titles, you would never guess it was Wayne Jackson. He is salt of the earth, humble, just plain spoken. And so I was sitting in but you get a sense of why he could get kids to compete so well. I was sitting in his kitchen interviewing him, and a few times during the course of our interview, I had my leading questions and we were going over, and he mentioned this young assistant coach from the University of Washington that helped him when he arrived on campus after hitchhiking 1,800 miles in just over 2 days. I mean, he was haggard, hungry, tired, and this young coach helped him out. He couldn't remember his name, couldn't remember anything about him. He just remembered he had kind of a funny name. And when I left that day, my 3-hour trip back to Topeka, if that person is out there, I have got to find him. And that's you just, again, talking about his athletes, you just want to do well for him. He's just a person that, just a good person. And so I spent probably 3 months to find Mike D'Antuono. And I've got a brief video. It's about a 40-minute video that I cut down to 3, so it's a little bit choppy in places. But I think you'll kind of understand the gist of what I'm talking about here. Hi, I'm Patrick Kelly. Today I'm going to talk about Wayne Jackson's epic journey to the 1973 NCAA championships. Before I introduce you to Wayne and a special guest, he decided the cheapest and easiest thing to do would be to hitchhike to nationals. And he tried to convince the other two to come with him, but safety concerns and just didn't think it'd be a good idea to travel that far, because nationals were in Seattle, Washington, 1,800 miles from Manhattan, Kansas. I've got to find him. I've got to find him so that Wayne can reconnect with him and thank him for what he did all those years ago. So I began internet search. I contacted some of my wrestling contacts that might know of people from that era that could maybe help me. I called out to the University of Washington, the library, the archives. They helped as much as they could. I contacted the Sports Information Director's office at the University of Washington, and Mike Bruskus was particularly helpful with me. He found an old program from a dual meet that listed the staff and the athletes, and then I followed up with some articles that kind of confirmed that Mike D'Antuono was this young assistant coach that Wayne was talking about. So with that, I continued my search and worked hard on it, and then I would let it go for a while and then get back to it. I just felt like I couldn't let it go. I had to find this. And I found a break. There was a blog post of all things about food. Coaching for Pizza, it was called, I believe, and with some coaches get together and they hash old memories, and they have food along with it. And Mike was featured in one of the blog posts in his picture with him and his wife. So from there, I found that he was living in Southern California. I found an email address, and lo and behold, it was a good email address. He responded back to me, and we began a correspondence by phone and email. So separately, I asked both of them if they would be interested in doing some kind of a video conference to reconnect after all those years. And they're both excited to do it. We set this up. And what you're about to see is a meeting between Mike D'Antuono and Wayne Jackson for the first time in 51 years. Enjoy.
Today I'm at Arc City on the campus of Collie County Community College, where I'm facilitating a meeting between Wayne Jackson and Mike D'Antuono. For the first time since 1973, Jackson and D'Antuono are meeting up via Microsoft Teams for a refreshing of their chance meeting in the 1973 NCAA tournament. So without any further ado, I'll switch the camera over here to Wayne and just start with some questions, and we'll let it go where it goes. All right, Mike, meet Wayne.
Yes, sir.
Hello, Mike.
Hello, Wayne. Jeez.
been a while. I couldn't imagine talking to you again after all these years, but thanks for your help all them years ago. And it was sure nice seeing you again, talking with you.
I really appreciate it. It's good seeing you, and glad we all got together.
All right. So again, that just gives you a sense of that primary source information and where it ends up manifesting itself. And then to be able to have quotes from Mike D'Antuono in the book when it's describing this, epic piece of history in the Kansas wrestling community is really made the chapter good to great, in my opinion. And also, I think that what's maybe most compelling to me is that much of these stories are not wrestling stories. They're just human interest, compelling stories about struggles, about triumphs, about tragedies. And this is just an example where this just really made the story, and today we're able to access information so much easier than we had in the past. And it really was, I was able to put that together because of that. The story kind of wrote itself in that regard. So at this time, I'll entertain any questions. I do have my email up there if you want to catch me that way, or I will be around. Definitely, I'm excited about this conference as much presenting as I am just being here, so I'll be around as well if you want to catch me that way. But are there any questions?
You mentioned a couple of the people finder sites.
Yeah.
And I forget which one it was, the white pages you bought?
Yes. Yeah, so White Pages was the one where I found that email address.
What was it you were looking for? There's a lot of stuff in there, like, they have my phone number, the right one, which is great.
Yeah. Well, I was looking for, so I think it was $12.99. You could get, this list of information. And I tell you though, nothing was good in it except that email address. The phone numbers were not good. Even the home address wasn't good anymore because he had moved around a few times. So, but it was definitely worth the $12.99 for that connection. So, yeah.
It's those sites you gotta watch out for.
Oh, absolutely.
Use a burner card.
Yeah.
Yeah, you gotta be careful.
Yeah. Oh, I very much so. I was very skeptical about it, but I was so determined, and it was like the last piece of the puzzle was almost there. Yeah, so absolutely. Yeah.
Have you tried using artificial intelligence to get started on any of your data gathering?
Oh man, that's a loaded question, especially in the education sector, right? I'll say no. However, what is artificial intelligence? Spell checker? Is that, So I did. But great question. I did use Grammarly. So I purchased, and it's kind of expensive, but I purchased, I think I ended up doing 2 3-month trials of Grammarly, which I guess that would be artificial intelligence.
Getting leads on where you might get data about events or people.
No, I really didn't. Most of that was, really all of that was, through the, and it was such a focused topic though too, that I had a pretty good handle on it with the people that were, because there were some people that were very enthused about this project. So they were very helpful. So I didn't really have to, but maybe could have. Yeah.
This might be a silly question, but when you're interviewing people or gathering information or trying to use personal accounts in your narratives, are there any, from a legal perspective, or what kind of things do you have to go through to make sure, not just getting your permission to use a story, but are there any other things you need to do? I'm just curious.
So my book was published, Flint Hills Publishing, if anybody's familiar with that, is who published my book. And Thea Rademacher is a lawyer. That's her background. So when I got going on this and was eventually under her publishing, she wrote a book on that, on all kinds of legal things with publishing. And I called her and I said, hey, I took notes on this book and there's lots of really good information on it. We need to talk about, those topics that you're talking about. And, luckily everybody was really enthused about doing it. The biggest thing probably was the pictures. There's a lot of pictures and a lot that didn't make it into the book even. And, she made very sure that, and I still have all that documentation of the permission to use the pictures. But you're right. Like a few grants that I've applied for, they're very heavy on that, on having a permission sheet. So that's a really good, and saving that, and good question. All right.
While people are still thinking of questions, I will point out that Ancestry.com is available through Johnson County Library, the library edition, for free with your library card. You do have to use that database in the building. One of the few databases that we have that has to be used in the building, but it's pretty amazing that you can get it for free. So if you go to your library.
The Topeka Shawnee County Library is the same thing. You have to be there to use it. And that was kind of been in the recent couple of years, I think. So it was different when I was going through it. But that's just another example though of the amount of rich, deep information that we have now. I mean, a lot of times it's not used for good purposes, but when it is and can be, it's just great stuff out there.
Any of the branches where they have computers?
That is a good question. I know that through Central you can use it, but I think you can be in other branches. The best thing to do, I would suggest for all of you, is to stop. The Johnson County Library, the branch librarians are staffing a table in Writers Row. You can always ask librarians. If they can't answer you right away, they will get back to you. And so if you have questions about researching things, about those kinds of resources, they are a good place to start.
And once you get started, it's hard to stop. I mean, I think I counted one time, and I had about 1,200 newspaper articles that I had in my folder that I was organizing and working with, and so some of that, just such great information out there. Yes?
Just how did you market, if you want to answer this, topic? How did you market your book?
It's such a niche kind of, and I guess at the outset you're thinking this thing's going to be a New York Times bestseller. It's just not the case. So at wrestling events, like the Kid State Tournament in Topeka is a huge event each year. So I set up a booth there, and then different wrestling events. Last week I was at a reunion, a K-State wrestling reunion that they had, kind of in conjunction with, because it's been the 50th year now since it's been dropped. So they had me come and kind of meet, but very small gatherings and truly very low sales as well. So the marketing piece, I think once you pick it up and look at it, and it's, again, so niche that, wrestling book, I'm not interested in that. So, if you have any ideas, let me know. Yeah. Well, I have these just available, at a table I'll set out, and then on the reverse side's a QR code for purchasing it. And then actually, back to my Zig Ziglar days, he had what you call a trigger page, if anybody remembers that. But so I made, and I've actually fancied it up a little bit. Instead of a bookmark, this is the bookmark. And on the reverse side is, any thoughts you might have. So what page did it come from? What does the paragraph begin with? And what's the little note that you have? And more for me, as I'm going through tier 2 to try to find mistakes, So, but no, good question. So so Facebook has a author page if you have a book. I've got that, so that's where I do most of my posting. But mostly that personal touch, getting out there and meeting people has been the best thing. So good question. But thank you for coming, and enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Patrick. That's great. It was a pleasure to meet you, and check out all the library resources and researching stuff.
Harris, Del Rock.
Oh, yeah, I do, the builder, right?
Yeah, he was a wrestling